All right, boys. Let's quickly get in here. I promised you all that I've got a theory for you, and in order to do my grand theory for the night, I kind of have to do this theory first. Now, this theory was sort of born from this interview with Steve Denuser, but also because we've spent a lot of time on this channel looking over the cosmological forces, trying to figure out where all of these cosmological forces fit in, right? Where all of these cosmological forces find themselves in their actual place. Now, one of the things you have to remember when it comes to the cosmological forces, or the chart of the cosmological forces, is this is as per the view of the Titans, right? This is confirmed at BlizzCon when they asked Steve Denuser about the differences between the Chronicles and also then, of course, what is happening in actual World of Warcraft. And he said, well, the Chronicles is written by the Titans, or at least from their perspective. Therefore, you cannot look at the Chronicles and think that this is canonical. This is canonical as far as we know until we learn differently, which I think was a brilliant move by Blizzard, just FYI. But there's a couple of things that is wrong right off the bat, especially when you read this interview from Steve Denuser, and I'll probably have a link in this as well for you at the bottom in the description. All right, so first things first. These elements that you see here, spirit, fire, air, decay, earth, and water, these spirits, or the elemental planes, is actually above the cosmological universe, which shows us very clearly that the Titans themselves don't quite understand how all of these forces fit together. Elemental magic, right, is the primal magic of the universe. In other words, it is the building blocks of our universe. It all comes from these elemental forces. The cosmological forces, in other words, disorder, death, shadow, order, life, and light, that is actually what they call high magic, right? So this is, or higher magics. So it would be the second in command. The question they asked him specifically had to do with spirit and anima. So is anima only spirit, or is spirit anima? Is this the same thing? And his basic fundamental argument here, Steve Denuser basically said, and this is something that a lot of people have been pointing out, a lot of people have constantly been wanting to look at spirit as sort of the driving force of our universe. But in this interview, right, Steve Denuser proves, he says, all of these elemental forces are equal on the elemental plane as the primal magics of the universe. So spirit isn't this far off sort of, it ties the whole universe together. It is just one cog in this entire machine that we call the universe, that we call the cosmological universe. Now, there's a couple of things that also came out in this interview that I believe is absolutely necessary for us to talk about. So we learn that these cosmological forces have a sort of two-way street that they function on. The one is that they all want to have all the power in the universe. The other is that they all want to be in balance all the time. So it's a constant push and pull between the different cosmological forces as to which one is going to be, on top, and then which ones are going to band together to kind of beat that one off the throne to keep the balance. And according to Steve Denuser, this has been happening over and over again since the beginning of the universe. Steve Denuser, especially in the second part of the interview, actually goes into a lot of detail on this. Our history, or at least the history that we know about, the cosmological forces, or the Chronicles, so to speak, is a very small part of the entire history of World of Warcraft. That history has been around much longer than us or our world has been around for, right? Or at least the history of our world has been around for. In fact, he speaks about the Eternal Ones and how the Eternal Ones are some of the only ones that have been around since the beginning of the universe. So at the very creation of the universe, the Eternal Ones were there. Now, this, of course, immediately could lead into a number of questions. Question number one is, does that mean that the Eternal Ones could also be the first ones? No. because the first ones would have been there since before the creation of the universe, right? So it was first the creator of all things, whom I believe laid down sort of the rule set for our universe to function on. Then he made the first ones. The first ones then created the universe, the actual physical universe, with all of the rules that he laid out for us. So basically, how the first ones would have done this is they started on the elemental plane. So they made the elements. They crafted the elements and all of the creatures that would exist within these elements. Then, out of these elements, they crafted the cosmological forces. In other words, the different covenants and the different, or rather, I want to call them covenants because they effectively function as covenants, but let's stick with cosmological forces. Then they crafted the different cosmological forces. These cosmological forces sort of pull on the elements in order to use their magic, right? So these elements feed into their magic, so they kind of mix and match all of this magic to turn it into their magic. Now, there is obviously a question here, or there is obviously an assertion that can be made in this. We could say that, hey, what if the cosmological chart sort of shows us what power is being used most by these? So, in other words, if you look at fire being almost far more a part of disorder than air, for example, air only briefly touching disorder, could we argue that disorder makes fundamental use of fire magic with a little bit of fire elements with a little bit of air element inside of it? And death obviously uses a little bit of decay with a little bit of air. You have earth being used by the Titans. That is something that we could, I guess, argue about, but I wouldn't put too much stock in that theory, just because I would be leaning far more to all of these different cosmological forces use all of the elemental magics, just in different quantities. So while, yes, this order makes a lot of use of fire, it also uses spirit magic and earth magic and water and air and decay to some extent, just not as much maybe as they would use fire. Yeah. But this again is not necessarily something that we have to talk about at a fundamental level, because I don't think it's important at a fundamental level to understand the story as it becomes, as it blows up out of here into something even more, right? Now, from the cosmological forces, right, we know, thanks to this interview, that there is a consistent war between these cosmological forces for control over the universe. What Steve Denuser didn't say in that interview, which I believe to be true, is the war is for reality. The ultimate warrior is fought for these three things, right? The Emerald Dream, reality, and the Shadowlands. This is what I believe the ultimate war is for. Steve Denuser also confirms in the second part of this interview, and again, I'll have the link for you guys if that's what you want to see, or if you want to check up on this, but Steve Denuser does confirm that reality, Azeroth, lies at the center of this war. The war between the cosmological forces, Azeroth lies at the center of it. And we, sort of by implication, because we live on Azeroth, we're pulled into the middle of this war as well. But this war really is about Arthas. Now, I've explained this in a video that will probably be coming out tomorrow, so on Monday, for those of you that's watching this right now. So I've explained here that I believe that Azeroth was sort of used as a conduit for souls to push the souls into the Shadowlands. But here's where this theory actually goes a little bit off the deep end, where you kind of have to hold on to your hats, hold on to your chair, because it's going to get wild in a second. What if reality, the Emerald Dream, and the Shadowlands were never meant to belong to any of the cosmological forces? Right now, the Shadowlands is where all mortal souls go to die, right? Once we die, we head into the Shadowlands. The Covenant of Death seems to have control over the Shadowlands. What if that was not how it was meant to be? What if that's not how the purpose, and when I say purpose, I'm talking about the purpose that governs the universe. What if that's not how the purpose wanted it to be? This is all part of an eternal war that at some point death won. At some point, death conquered the Shadowlands. And through this conquering, death gained control of the anima that comes from reality. The physical, the most powerful of all things, anima. It makes sense that these different cosmological forces would want to fight each other, right? Now, I want to make a couple of things clear. Reality is not life. Us being alive is not part of life. The Emerald Dream is not life. The Emerald Dream is the physical copy of reality. It's the perfect copy of reality, but it is not life. Life is consuming. This is something that I've been working on for a while now. Myself and Apocalypse had this conversation in Discord not too long ago. Every single one of the cosmological forces of the universe feeds on the universe. It all has a consuming nature to it, for some reason. The Evergrowth, for example, we were shown the Evergrowth dungeon. What happens to life when it is left unchecked? It destroys everything. It feeds on everything and it just overgrows an entire planet in seconds. If life is left to just consume all of its power. Every single one of these cosmological forces have a sort of consuming nature where it will take until there is nothing left to take. So this is why they're sort of built in opposition to one another. Their job is to keep smacking each other down. As one rises to power, the others will slap it down, and then the next one will rise to power, and the others will slap it down. So I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine this. Long ago, reality is built. Reality is made by the first ones, and I now believe that Elune might be the first one of reality. I believe that every single one of these cosmological forces were made by a different first one. Elune was the one who built reality. And she built it in a way to also have some sort of balance to it. Life would be born from the Emerald Dream. From the Emerald Dream, it would come into existence in reality, where it would spend a minute amount of time in the backdrop that is the universe of infinite time, and then it would retire within the Shadowlands. And this, by the way, again, is stated in this interview. The Shadowlands is a world of infinite possibilities, infinite realms. And there are realms that we're never going to see in the Shadowlands, but these are realms that, for example, when Steve Denuza was asked, what about Duratan? He said he imagines that Duratan is on a world where he's hunting every day with his wolves. Right? So Duratan is just going out there, hunting every single day from dusk till dawn, going to bed, eating meat, drinking ale. Next day, him and his wolves back out there, hunting once again. This is the world that he imagines for Duratan. And I believe this is exactly what Elune built. Elune built a world after reality, where all souls would go to retire for eternity. The problem is the cosmological forces very quickly realized that there is an immense amount of power inside the Shadowlands. It is not, I believe, by accident that the Titans placed the Shadowlands not as part of the realms of death. If you look at the cosmological map, they did not place the Shadowlands inside the cosmological forces of death. Instead, they placed the Shadowlands as a link to reality. It was never meant to be ruled over by a singular cosmological force, but it's not ruled over by a single cosmological force. I don't know which one of the cosmological forces rose to power first, but I do believe that at some point, death and life made a deal. At some point, death and life entered into an alliance with one another. an alliance to smack down one of the other cosmological forces. We have the evidence of this. The cosmological forces have been present inside the Shadowlands, and they have attacked the Shadowlands. I believe they've attacked the Shadowlands because death is not meant to rule over the Shadowlands. The reason, and this again you learn throughout the course of Shadowlands questing, every single one of the Shadowlands zones that we go to right now was built by their Eternal One. Their Eternal One made that realm inside the Shadowlands. And as a result, they took control of the natural flow of souls. The natural flow of souls is that once a soul dies, it flows into the river of souls, Gargua. This river runs through the maw, and I believe through this river, you ultimately end up at the place where you most want to go. In other words, the realm that is best suited for you to live out the eternity that you've been given after living on Azeroth. The Eternal Ones could not let that stand, and I believe this is because of another cosmological force that rose to power that became far too powerful to stop. So the Eternal Ones built Erebos. Erebos built, if you look at Erebos, it is directly in the middle of the flow of souls into the river Gargua. The souls die, right, from reality, from Azeroth. One somebody, by the way, states this. In Legion, not in Legion, in Battle for Azeroth, when you're going to find out what happened to Vol'jin, when somebody tells you we need to go to Icecrown. And then he says something along the lines of Icecrown is not just a throne of ice, it is a literal anchor to the next world. When somebody confirms that Icecrown is a literal anchor to the next world. Now, the interesting thing here is he's not talking about the building. The building was built by Arthas, and it was built, I think, to magnify this effect. He's talking about the physical location where Icecrown Citadel is built. That location is the anchor to the Shadowlands. It's the thing that allows for all souls to move from the Great Beyond into the Shadowlands. But they decide to build Erebos in the middle of this soul stream. So now the Arbiter stops the souls before they enter into the maw in order to place them in a realm where they can serve death. I don't believe that we were ever meant to serve death, and I believe the cinematic or the animatic actually
Save my soul.
I want you to focus specifically on Uther's first words here when he's talking to Devos. So focus specifically on those words.
Uther.
Where am I?
Welcome to Bastion. You led a truly selfless life. And for that, you have been chosen.
Chosen?
To shed your mortal burdens and join the ranks of the Ascended, serving to ferry the souls of the dead unto the Shadowlands.
I serve the light.
Selfless life. And for that, you have been chosen.
Chosen?
To shed your mortal burdens and join the ranks of the Ascended, serving to ferry the souls of the dead unto the Shadowlands.
I serve the light.
Uther states this here. Uther says to what are you talking about? I serve the light. My job is to the light. So in the presence of the cosmological forces, Uther should have been there. He spent his entire life serving the light, but now he is made to serve death. He is made to serve the cosmological force of death, rather than the cosmological force that he spent his entire life serving, light. He goes on to say that my job isn't over. My task is not complete. I need to stay. I need to go back. I need to stop Arthas. And he's told, no. Not necessary, bro. You just keep doing what the fuck you're doing. It isn't over. My task is not complete. I need to stay. I need to go back. I need to stop Arthas. And he's told, no. Not necessary, bro. You just keep doing what the fuck you're doing. Ability to serve death. I mean, unless you're a Death Knight, in which case, yes, you're as close to necromancy as you can possibly fucking get. And yet, when we die, all of us as a collective fuck off to death. How does this make sense? Why would the light and the void and order and life and disorder agree to this? They wouldn't agree. Unless, of course, they lost the war. When life, order, and disorder, or death rather, when they banded together to beat out all of the other cosmological forces and take control of the Shadowlands, they have effectively upset the balance of our universe. They have upset the shall we say, careful balance. This is a balance that can very easily be tipped one way or the other. So you have to be very careful with what you do and how you do it. They have tipped the scales in their favor to the point where life never needs to experience death. Again, something that doesn't make a lot of sense and something that is desperately evil. Life, the creatures of life, never experiences death. Never. They will go to the Shadowlands where they will be prepared to be reborn. The rest of the souls, they go to the Shadowlands to feed death. But this is the deal that they made. The deal was simple. Order's deal was Azeroth. If you help us, we will give you the power of Azeroth. We will provide you with all the energy and all the power you require from Azeroth. Help us disrupt the flow of souls. Give us the control that we want, that we need, in order to stop the other cosmological forces from breaking out and controlling the universe. And they're desperate to get it back, by the way. They are desperate to get that power back. Whether or not they will, that's a different question, and most likely meant for a different discussion. But something's gotta give. And that's gonna lead, remember this, because this is going to lead directly into the Sylvanas discussion we're gonna have tonight, as to why people do not understand Sylvanas. Why so many people still do not see what she's doing, and why so many people are still confused about what she's doing. Anyways, now I want to hear from you guys. What do you have to say?